Today I'm making a pierced fruit bowl. The cutouts help keep air circulating and fruit fresh. But there's a tip that's make or break when it comes to this project. Let's take a look. I'm using a little under 3 kilos of clay, and you might have already recognized my favorite yellow speckled clay. I start by centering the clay. My clay is quite robust, and I think that'll help when I'm cutting through the clay. And then I flatten the clay. I flatten to a little under 20 centimeters. And then I push down into the clay, leaving a little under a centimeter in the base. I open the clay out with a scooping motion. I want the base to be lightly curved for a bowl. And I start to form the walls. I start by keeping the walls quite upright. I remember to compress the rim and across the base. Now I'm ready to pull up the walls. And now I'm pulling the walls up and outwards. And on the final pull, I'm stretching the rim out to its final width. I want a sturdy rim on this bowl, so I compress the rim. And I shape using a sponge on the inside and a rib on the outside to support the bowl. And then I wire through and dry to leatherhard. My bowl is leatherhard and I'm ready to trim. I use a large bat to place on the rim and I upend my bowl. It's very much like flipping a cake. And then I'm going to center. My bowl stays in place, but if it did slide around, I could easily fasten with lugs of clay. I'm going to trim a little of that excess clay away. First, around the foot. I'm going to make a very simple foot ring on the bowl. So now I'm just removing some of that excess clay in the base. Keeping in mind, I want the walls to be quite an even thickness, perhaps just a little heavier at the base. Any thinner spots are going to be a problem when I cut into the clay. So I'm forming a foot by trimming a light indentation across the base. I start trimming in the middle and bring my cutting tool right out to the foot. I smooth the clay with my flexible rib. This slightly compresses the clay, leaving a very smooth surface. And now to flip the bowl again. Now this is where it gets interesting. It's time to pierce the bowl. I'm using a set of circle cutters. Of course, this could be other shapes. Or just use a knife to cut freehand. But I'm keeping this one simple. I really want to gauge if this is a process for me. I'm using various sizes and I'm going to keep it quite random. I do need to make sure that I leave enough clay between the cutouts. My clay's just the right consistency to cut. And this is important. It's my number one tip. If it's too dry, the clay will crack and crumble as I cut. On the other hand, if the clay is still too damp, the bowl will likely deform as I cut into it. The cutting takes some time, so I'll speed through this. So my tip is to pay careful attention to the drying. I would say I'd rather have it slightly on the damp side for cutting. Notice that I'm supporting the clay with my other hand as I cut. I set aside to dry a little more. And now I need to tidy the cutouts. I'm just sponging the cut surfaces with a lightly damp sponge. And there's quite a bit of this, so let's zoom through this as well. Notice I've left the base of the bowl solid. If I wanted the piercing to run across the base, I would have made a slightly taller foot ring. And now I flip the piece and tidy the base. After the clay's cut away, this piece is really light. And I'll set aside to dry fully before bisque firing. Once bisque fired, I'm ready to glaze. I glaze the underside first. I'm using a brush-on jade coloured glaze. Ideally, I'd have a basin of dipping glaze. So it takes a while to get around all the cutouts. I take my time and I give it 2 good coats. So I flip the bowl back over and I glaze the top. There are lots of options for glazing these pieces. And then it's into the kiln for a glaze firing. This version of a pierced fruit bowl is both super functional and relatively easy to do. The most important for me is to make sure that the clay is the right consistency when cutting into it. This will minimize cracking and misshaping. For help with the throwing of the bowl, check out my large fruit bowl video, and happy potting!